So welcome everyone. My name is Jody King and I'm the Assistant Director for the Alaska Apex Accelerator. And this morning we're going to talk about how to search the Federal Procurement Data System, or FPDS. And we're going to talk about how to gather federal contracting data through FPDS. It's a really incredibly handy tool, but like all tools, you got to know how to use it to really get that benefit from the software itself. So let's go ahead and get started. So short list of what we're going to do. We're going to kind of talk about how's it linked, why use FPDS, using search criteria, and then we're going to go into demonstrations. I'm going to start from pulling something from contract opportunities and then finding its match in FPDS. And then I just want to do a whole lot of information search, just going into FPDS, because we want to be able to use the software from the fact of, does the government buy what I sell? So we're going to be spending quite a bit of time playing in FPDS. So how's the data linked? So if you've done any of my webinars, this is an old favorite slide of mine, but I'd like to refresh everyone's memory that all of the federal contracting data is readily accessible. It's learning how to use the various websites, how they're tied together to be able to find that information. So we today are going to be focusing here in this bottom corner on how to use the Federal Procurement Data System. But just as a reminder, this is the past procurement data. So these are awarded contracts. If it's a civilian agency, it usually awards within 24 hours after an award is executed. If it is Department of Defense, those awards are still filtered and reviewed to make sure that content that is not accessible to general public is filtered out, and then that is uploaded quarterly. So there is a delay for DoD contracts. And of course, that information is then pulled by USA Spending, slightly different format. Sorry, guys, frog in my throat. 1 second. All right, and so that information is pulled by USA Spending. And of course, we're looking for contract opportunities in SAM, and then we want to look at that procurement history. But also just a reminder, you feel free to check out other agency websites, look for agency forecasts, go to the agency website and specifically that regional or state level website for that agency. Because again, finding those keywords, the things that the agencies are highlighting on their website, is a great way then to use those as keywords and then back into FPDS. And of course, we have GSA. If you're looking, they have their schedule querying, schedule sales. We're also going to talk about how to determine if there's a GSA contract used when we're looking at the data in FPDS. So it kind of ties it back, well, how are we using that from a search process? So we can either start in SAM, start in FPDS, maybe we want to hop back up to USA Spending to kind of pull back and look at the finance thread, back to the agency websites for more information, keywords, maybe some specific stuff that we might be looking for, budget sites where those are posted. This is the best use for Department of Defense. Back to SAM or the dynamic small business search, because now maybe we're looking for contractor or incumbent information. And then we can even think about going back to competitor websites and checking out what are they doing, what do they have posted, and then back into SAM. So again, today we're going to be focused on using FPDS. Now, just as a heads up, I am doing a webinar a week from today, from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. I'm featuring contract opportunities. We're really specific using and searching at contract opportunities and making the most of this website. All right, so again, I can't stress the importance of searching, building search criteria, and the importance of having the right search criteria and understanding what it is what is it that we are targeting, what are we looking for, so that we have a good start point going into the FPDS database. We have search filters, and again, I just debated whether I wanted to put this slide in or not while talking about FPDS, because we're going to see it again on the contract opportunities. But it's just a reminder that you can use these search filters here within SAM and then use that information to kind of then match back and forth into FPDS. So just kind of tying these two sites together. And rate search information in FPDS is looking at the agency names hierarchy, and you can find that in sam.gov here under this sub-tier department agency. And these codes can also be a search for FPDS. All right, so why use FPDS? We kind of talked about, all right, here it is, why do we want to use it? So if we have a new solicitation cycle, we open up SAM, we go into contract opportunities, maybe you guys are using bid match, you see a posted solicitation, and the first thing everybody wants to know is this a new or is there an incumbent? What is the financial history of the previous contract, if there was a previous contract? What type contract did they use? What was the dollar amount posted to that contract? And then we also might want to know if we're trying to diversify or move into a new industry, or even just expand in our existing industries. Well, who are competitors contracting with? What contracts have they received? Maybe we're trying to find out contact information from a contracting officer. Quite a bit of information that you can pull from FPDS. Maybe you are looking at a potential new teaming partner and you want to know, have they actually received federal contracts? We can do research on that as well. We can do this, use FPDS strictly from what agencies are buying by going in and looking at the agency data itself. And we can narrow it down to contracting offices, down to subsets of agencies, and use NAICS codes and PSC codes to determine specific industry types. And then of course, while we're doing all of this type of searching, did you know that you can actually create a login and save all your search data? It uses the login.gov. So you don't have to create a new login, and you can download Excel spreadsheets. And of course, if you love playing in Excel, create pivot tables, but you can download and save all of that search data, sort it, filter it, do the things that you need after you've done that search in FPDS. There are search templates after you log into FPDS. They used to be called, well, they still are. I should rephrase that. There are ad hoc reports, which means they're already built and available. That portion of FPDS has been moved under SAM, and I have a screenshot of that here in a minute. All right, so just as a reminder, we talk about there's a lot of great information in FPDS, but let's talk about what's not in FPDS. And I'm not going to go over that whole list, but the one thing I do want to pull out, this very first bullet, is copies of entire contracts, statement of work, and subcontracting data. What you're going to get from FPDS is the awardee information, the agency that awarded it, the award type, and whatever description. Excuse me, everyone, one second. And a very, very brief description that was entered into the software data or pulled from the purchase request information. You are not going to see the entire copy of the contract. Now, why I like to bring this up and kind of focus on this a bit more is a lot of times people, when they want to know the previous contract for a new solicitation activity, they want to know, well, what was the amount awarded? And they get caught up on knowing that dollar amount, thinking that's going to be their target amount for this contract. And I just like to point out a reminder that contracts can change in content, in scope. There's various factors. The cost of doing business can change, and depending, was this a 1-year contract or a 5-year contract? How valid, that time cost of money, how valid are those contracting dollars compared to, you know, when it was awarded versus now? And has that scope of work changed any? Is it greater? Is it less? Are there new requirements that might have been added? It's good for a guideline if you like that information, but please don't get too caught up on post-cost awards of previous incumbents, thinking that that's where you should be bidding for the new solicitation activity. There's a lot of factors that we are missing. You would need to get a copy of the previous solicitation itself, which unfortunately we cannot do from FPDS, and then you can do a scope comparison to start to even get a valid idea of that cost, that award dollar per scope. All right, data from agencies not subject to FPDS reporting requirements according to the FAR, so again, there's exemptions. Purchase card data is not in there unless it goes over the micro purchase threshold, and in that case, credit card purchases over those dollar thresholds must be reported. Interagency agreements, grants data, cooperative agreements, training authorizations, etc. Most transactions that involve government bills of lading, transportation requests, those type of things are also not found within FPDS. All right, so here is brief introduction to FPDS. This is the website. Quite simply, it's fpds.gov. I have a full link here, but if you just type in fpds.gov and make sure that you are not on one of the third-party websites, then here it is with their Google-like search to help you find federal contracts. The first thing we do is we just enter a search and get started. Now, on the home page of FPDS, I do want to pull out, there's some really handy documents. So they do have latest information, news, some activity here. So you can see the national interest codes, those NIA. They still have codes reported from national disasters from the previous fiscal year, but they have decommissioned that and they're no longer using those codes, which was kind of sad because you could search by that code and pull up every contract related to that, activity. What I really want to pull out is these FAQs and this easy search FAQ. This document, I've got uploaded both the PDF and a Microsoft Word copy, but this is one of the most critical documents that you'll need on using this website. So if for any reason you forget to grab the downloads or you're not able to find your copy, once you've downloaded it, you can always pull it right here from the FPDS website. All right, and here's an example of what it looks like. And the nice thing of this document is it shows us the FPDS element, and these are the search criteria that we can pull up in FPDS. So here's the search field, the search type, and this search type, why it's important, is it's telling us how we have to enter our search terms to be able to get search results. So you can see here, let's pull agency code. Agency code, it has to be exact, and that 4-character agency ID. And that ties back to the screenshot that I showed you earlier from Sam, where we went in and pulled those agency codes right out of GSA's listing for Sam itself. We can have award type, and you can see the search field that we would want is award/IDV type, and it says free text full words, but if for best search results, here's example of what you can fill in. So anytime I'm trying to find something in FPDS and I'm not finding quite the right information, I will pull up this document, this easy search FAQ, and I will look at the different search fields and play with those and how are those found. How can I use that to really help me dial it in? And when you become comfortable using this document and how to put your search terms in what manner, and we'll see some things like searching the place of performance state name. The state has to be in full in all caps. So like here, these additional reporting codes, see how they're all caps. That data match is really critical. All right, so how to get started. I kind of broke it out here just more so that it's a handy reminder when you have your slides in front of you. But we want to start with that easy search feature. Now, when you click in this bar, and if you remember, it says Google like search, you click in here, this doesn't go away. You do have to highlight it and delete it, but then you can come in here, and I like to start with a single search. Start with one search term. Whether you do a keyword, NAICS code, usually I'll start with the NAICS code and begin my search. And then once that's done, I like to open the advanced search. We can add other filters. We can come in here and then click sort using date signed. Now I do this, usually what I do, I have this out of order. My habit is I enter my single search term, and once that populates, I immediately come down here and click descending by date signed because I want to get the newest data on top. And it tends to keep that search order, that how the information is displayed. And I have used these other factors before when I was really trying to dig up something, but I always use that descending date sign. Again, I want the newest information on top because the trends of how things are coded, the PSC codes and those NAICS codes actually change over time. And of course, the NAICS codes also change every 4 years as well, every 5 years as well. And so you want to make sure that you're using the newest and the current information. All right, so we've searched it, and then I continue adding any advanced search terms such as modification number. This is one of my favorites because I'm trying to find a specific activity. And once I find that contract in itself, I can always remove this search term and see the entirety of the contract with all of the modifications. But until you're trying to find that original activity, if you have all of the original award plus all of the modifications, it's so much more data to sort through to try to find that, especially if you're looking from a solicitation activity and you're trying to find that contract history of that particular activity. And the one thing I like to say is be confident enough in FPDS to keep adding search filters and play with your search filters until you actually break your search. Because then if it pops up, and I have a screenshot what that looks like, where it says no search results, you can click the X in front of any of your search terms here and remove that last level of search. So feeling free to go in and kind of think of it as the waves on the beach. Spring break, who wouldn't like to think about the waves on the beach? But add and remove search terms and go up and down those various levels until we can really massage that data to find what we are looking for. And again, once you kind of got like, aha, this is really what I'm looking for, you can go ahead and then download those search results. You can do the comma separated value if you want to dump that into Google Docs type of spreadsheet, or want to move that into Excel. I always forget that, comma separate value for Excel, or you can just save that as a hard PDF document. So again, you can just see this is just a search I did last night. I started by the search criteria, it builds here. You can see I started with the engineering search. I looked for the place of performance state name in Alaska, and you can see how it's in quotes, because this is, again, one of those exact words, modification number 0. And I had an award completion date. I was looking for anything that might be upcoming for engineering, where the contract's completing this year or within the next fiscal year and might come up for bid again. So we can kind of look at it that way too for what contracts are closing that we know are constantly renewed, especially for like Department of Defense. Speaking of here, any sort of MATOC, SABRs, or type of contracts. All right, so FPDS reports, this is what I wanted to tell you. I'll be honest, since this has been moved, this component of FPDS has been moved under SAM, I usually don't log into SAM, FPDS to start, since they're basic, ad hoc, pre-built, pre-filtered, and you can kind of see contract data reporting. In SAM, you don't really get to go in and filter it at all. You can just download large bits of data. If you're looking for very specific, I recommend going through this process, build your search, and then download from FPDS itself. But if you're looking for specific pre-built reporting, you can pull that from SAM, from the data bank. All right, so demonstrations. And just again, as a reminder, I see Melanie, thank you for adding some comments and questions, but I do have a few pre-built searches, but I'd like to encourage everyone joining us this morning to enter any search criteria for your business that you'd like me to look up. NAICS codes, keywords, please help me with that so we can get the search that's going to best benefit you. All right, so here's something that I went in and pulled together last night. I went into SAM because this is a great start area when I kind of like, well, what should I search? And the thing with SAM is SAM's going to give you that current good heavens, current snapshot of contract activity, the solicitation activity, what's open here and now. And so I went in and I just did a search word, basically solicitation, and used Alaska as a keyword and found, okay, what's available. And so here, this is a floating breakwater replacement, Bar Point Harbor, Ketchikan, Alaska. And we can see the notification was posted by the Department of Defense for the Corps of Engineers. So this is a Corps run project. We have the classification. This is our PSC code. This is J020, maintenance, repair, building equipment, ship and ring equipment. And they're using the NAICS code for heavy civil engineering construction. Place of performance is in Ketchikan. So that where that benefits us, there's no place of performance city. The best we can do is place of performance state for search in FPDS. All right, and description, because again, I kind of want to get a feel of what is it that they're doing. So I just grabbed the first part of the description for purposes of screenshot. And I went into FPDS. This is my search result. And you can see my very first search term, I pulled that NAICS code, the 237990. Matched here, this other heavy SIP. And then I used the same PSC code, this J020 that we found here as well. And it was kind of interesting. I found not much when I started filtering in place of performance, breaking it down, that modification, and looking for, has this activity been issued before in the state of Alaska? And I found out not by the Corps of Engineers. So this is kind of a new Corps of Engineers project, at least under this combination of NAICS codes, because and this is where we're pulling it out, is in FPDS, in this top box, it's going to give us this top 10 department full name. And any of these things that are in this kind of purple blue are links. You can click on these and add these as search terms. So what I don't see, we could click here at Department of Defense, and then we can see here the top contracting agency, department to sub-agency, and we can go in and even see top full business names. But what I found out when I dug into further levels is the only contracts issued under these two codes were done by Homeland Security, which would have been US Coast Guard. And so there wasn't any contracting history specific as has the Corps done these type of breakwater projects here, Ketchikan. We would have to then say, okay, if I'm trying to find a history for US Army Corps of Engineer projects, USACE projects here in Alaska that are under these codes, I think what I would do is remove this product service code and maybe look at other keywords, look at the place of performance, and do a different search that way. So there is a little bit of applying logic in pulling the information out of FPDS. If I'm looking for, I really want to do this project, who's the incumbent? And so that might be the type of information digging in the agency, is to not be so hard on the fact, well, maybe the Corps of Engineers didn't do. Maybe that was done by the agency that is actually spending the funds. So we have to kind of think about that and play with it a little bit too. And this is where I like to remind everybody that these PSC codes are incredibly handy, because NAICS codes are very broad in description. And we're going to see that when we start looking at just engineering. That's one of my favorites because it covers all disciplines of engineering, and it's a very broad NAICS code. So using these PSC codes, which get really nitpicky in the details, really help tie back if we're looking for very specific activities. But again, the contracting officers, contract specialists change over time, and they are pulling the NAICS codes. They're the ones that determine which NAICS code, which PSC code are they using to define this activity, and they are using what makes sense to them. So don't get too caught up on that we have to have an exact code match based on how SAM, the activity was defined in SAM, to find that activity here. So what I would do if I really was looking for specific history is I would remove this NAICS code and dig further. Or I'm sorry, not NAICS code, but remove the PSC code. And I would even go over to other PSC codes. Let me get out of this for a second. As we can see here, and this is outreach systems. And I just do PSC code lookup and I look for outreach systems. I do have a link to this website listed in that slide that has all the search terms, but we can come in here and you can see under marine, if I wasn't finding anything and that search term, I'm gonna just grab this over again, was this 220, there we go, J020. And if I'm not finding that readily, well, we can come back here so we can see Group J, maintenance, repair, rebuild. But we can use, and this is why I like using this site, because they kind of tie these two things in together. So if it's a service code, we see the letter, and if it's just straight supply, it's numbered. And so we have this combination of J, so again, we can see maintenance, repair, rebuilding of equipment. Well, honestly, that J20 is this breakwater replacement. A harbor isn't, equipment's kind of using that more loosely. So if we're looking for marine, because again, we were looking for specific, what other do we have? Installation of equipment, ship and repair building. So we can start grabbing other PSC codes that I can then even just here, this C216, and I could play with those different PSC codes in FPDS, and it's easy enough to hop in and out. All right. Slide, pull this back up. So I just want to let you know, because I usually try to find something that's a brilliant example, throw it up on the screen, and it's like, look, everything matches. But that's not always the case. And so it's rethinking of what might be the factor that's not helping us find that exact match. All right, so here's another one that was unique that I wanted to pull out just based on the search terms. And this was the continuous emissions monitoring, or CHEMS, continuous, I would guess CHEMS for the, let me not get hung up on that JPEG, what is the GIF for GIF? All right, but pulling this information here, and I didn't box it like I did with the previous, but we can see here, let me get my little highlighter back again, but we can see here that these search terms, so here's the NAICS code, this 541380, testing and laboratory services, and then here, this quality control miscellaneous. Anything that ends in that 99, whether NAICS codes or PSC codes, is always going to be miscellaneous. So we pulling this information, and this was the very first one that I started to build last night, and absolutely was not finding any information. You can see I pulled this starting data, I added the NAICS code, the 541380, which is this testing and laboratory services. I put my place of performance, state of Alaska, because I'm looking for the contracts that were issued here in state, and I added the PSC code. And then, of course, I did my NAICS code, date, sign, and then these additional data. And what I found was, look at the newest 2014, and I wasn't finding anything even remotely that matched this activity. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. So I went back and I started looking at the description. Provide all personal labor supervision necessary to provide continuous 24-hour day, 7-day a week maintenance of hardware, software to chems and chematas equipment. If you're in that industry, and I'm horribly killing that acronym, sorry about that, equipment monitoring and reporting. So these emission boilers. And I thought, okay, if this is a heavy service monitoring the personnel, then possibly that's not the right NAICS code. This testing laboratory services. So maybe this is good, but the testing laboratory, that might be the wrong NAICS code. Now, and I wanted to bring this up. This is kind of a little bit of a rabbit trail, you know, not specific to looking things up in FPDS, but just kind of a good teaching moment for talking to contracting officers about NAICS codes. So each NAICS code we know has a size standard, and that's established by SBA, either based on gross receipts or number of employees. So what we'd want to do if your business was very interested in this, but maybe that NAICS code, the size standard made you a large business, and if this was a small business set aside, yeah, here it is, small business set aside, you might not be eligible. Well, is this the best NAICS code then for this activity? Well, for searching the history of this type of work, no, it's horribly not the right activity. In fact, let me get I'm going to grab this because I actually went into, if I can get that to open for me. Yeah, it's going to be slow. Oh, no. So let's do, oh, there it goes. And what was that? NAICS code 541380. Because when we looked at the definition of the NAICS code, it's just that. Performing physical, chemical, other analytical testing services, and it's not usually necessarily done on site, it's done may occur in a laboratory or on site. But is this necessary? And this is where we might want to really become familiar with using the NAICS codes and find, well, what is the best NAICS code for that activity? Even if we don't want to point it out to the contracting officer, if we don't care about that part, we'll just let it be. But we want to find that search history for this activity, then we would want, there it goes. Then we would want to find, well, what's the best NAICS code for our use for searching in FPDS? So I do want to let you know that this just plain in FPDS itself, we might have to use these other databases to tweak what it is, to find the right information, to tweak our search factors to be able to find that history. So if we're looking for, is there an incumbent for this activity, these code combinations as listed in SAM and contract opportunities are not going to get us the right history here. Now, of course, I like to point out we can always reach out to the contracting officer and ask, is there an incumbent? And can we get that contract award number for the previous incumbent? And the nice handy thing is you can put a contract number directly in FPDS. No dashes, just put the number straight in. Because if you look here, the award number, there's no dashes. So even though we might see a dash in the solicitation number, I don't have a screenshot handy, don't use the dashes here. All right, so enough of my things I wanted to point out. So here's a couple of canned demonstration. Okay, so 8A set-aside janitorial contracts. So here's the questions that I have here, and then I'm going to dig into, we've got 25 minutes to actually use FPDS directly. So often get asked, what is the best way to search USA spending, FPDS, or SAM.gov reports? So when we are searching, it comes back to, because yes, all of those are great. Do we want to go directly the SAM.gov reports where I showed you a screenshot of those ad hoc reports? Do we want to go into FPDS, or do we want to go to USA spending? So it's, why are we looking? I like searching in USA spending when I want to see the flow of money. It gives us contract data, it does pre-filter, it's a little more heavy-handed of the search criteria, and you're going to get bigger data bites more general information. So we can search by federal funds. I like using USA spending when I want to see where grant awards are coming into the state, because those grant recipients are going to need to spend those grant funds, especially if they're grant awards to, say, Department of Transportation, State of Alaska, because we know that means those are going to result in upcoming construction activities for the state. So I like looking and using USA spending for that. And yes, again, you can get contract data like you can FPDS, and it's nicely pre-filtered, but it's hard to really massage that data as well as doing it from FPDS. So again, it's why do you want the reports? What are you looking for specifically? And that can help you use which starting point. If you don't like FPDS, if you've not had as much luck finding what you're looking for in FPDS, and you're okay looking at that next level of general data, that whole big data picture, then yeah, absolutely use those ad hoc reports from SAM. The why they were filtered, the purpose of these reports, the target of those reports are a little different and are limited from the ad hoc or again, USA spending. I love USA spending for where's the money flowing. Now, how do you differentiate ANC versus tribal contract awards, entity 8A versus individual 8A? There is no good search filter for that. In FPDS, you can do competition type. In fact, let me pull, well, I'll look at that in a minute. You can pull up the easy search. Here we go. Let me pull this up on my screen. We can come in here, and I like to do the control find to pull up my navigation and then put in, well, what is it that I'm looking for? Competition, and then let it find it on the document so I don't have to read it. I love that. Control F, control find. So other than full and open competition, there are some competition terms. There were 2 results. Well, that's not much, but you can even do competitive. Let me see if I can do it. There we go. Now we have 15 completion competitive, but using things like that under competition methods set aside. Oh, that's what we want. See, play with these words. You'll see set aside is not find anything, but when I started under set, local area set aside. So see how they're using set aside without the dashes. So see, important too. So we could even just do that. There is a way where we can put under competition type. I don't use it that often, quite honestly. I tend not to look for just 8A, but that's something I could work on and give you a better example. We can play with that a little bit too. But that's how we would need to pull it. We can find if it's been an 8A set aside to start with, and then honestly, how is it going to be ANC versus an entity owned or non? You would actually have to look at all of the individual. There is no designation from that contracting standpoint that wants to separate ANC versus non-ANC to pull data. Unfortunately, no great data handy to search using FPDS. In that case, that's where maybe having a data mining subscription, such as I always pull Delta Hex and GovWin because they're the kind of the Cadillac and most expensive. We have subscriptions to Easy GovOps and GovSpend, or just a couple. There's hundreds of different data mining. And again, those are a paid subscription. They will have ways of being able to filter data based on the awardee information and go in and separate that. From FPDS or USA spending, there really isn't a handy way to separate ANC versus entity owned awards for 8A. All right, let me get back to my slides. All right, and then we have a request to look for janitorial contracts, and absolutely, and it says 8A set aside janitorial contracts. That one's a lot harder. It's almost easier to look at janitorial contracts for Alaska and then look at how often was that set aside used in comparison. And that would be a filter or a pivot table. I might search after I've downloaded search. Good heavens, I'm sorry, let me start over and be coherent, where I would do a search in FPDS using the NAICS code for janitorial place of performance Alaska, and then I would definitely use a date, and I'll show you a date range, and then I would download that data and then use pivot tables on award type. Okay, so, oops. So let's start from here. So what I wanted to just point out before we just jump right into FPDS is it's okay to break your search. So you can see here, I made up a PSC code just because I intentionally wanted to break the search for screenshot, and it comes back no results found. In this case, I would simply click on the X, removing that PSC code, and then I would play with this again. So you can hop in and out of levels of data. Each search criteria that you add in FPDS is going to tighten your search parameters. It doesn't expand it. If I want to expand my search parameters, I need to remove some of my search criteria. All right, so let's get out of this and let's get into FPDS. All right, so I'm going to just quick start. And again, just to get in the habit of deleting that, let me just start with this 236220, which is just a construction NAICS code. And you can see it automatically pops it into a different screen. If you are using FPDS, now mine's set to upload where it creates a new tab when I'm starting something and you're having search. If your pop-up blocker is on, that might cause problems in FPDS because it does pop up a new window for that search. Okay, let me make this a little bigger so you guys can see it. All right, so here we go. You can see hundreds. Look at that, back to 2003, don't care. I've got my first search criteria right here. I'm going to come to descending, date signed. And it's thinking. Because there we go. We want to know what's going on. All right. So just as a trivia, who's the biggest awardee from an agency for pure construction contracts? So we can see Department of Defense. And under Department of Defense, we have Department of Army. But we don't care on the national level. We want to add different things. So here's the advanced search button. We're going to click here, and you can add as many terms if you know what you want to pre-filter. If you say, oh, too many, we can go in here. So first thing we want to do is we're looking for things that happen in Alaska. Now, instead of scrolling down, a nice thing is you can just start typing on your keyboard and then just arrow down. There we go. So we can do congressional district, country, state. And again, based on that spreadsheet here, if we are doing place of performance, I want to show you. So state name, exact, Virginia, and you can see that the example is all caps. All right, so we're going to type Alaska, oops, in all caps. And then, like I said, I like to do the modification of 0 because, again, I'm going to go ahead and just do these one at a time. But I want to show you when we're looking at these activities, search, let's get that filter in there. All right, so now I have 2 search criteria. When I'm looking at these activities, we can see right here, just this top one on the list, that we have our award ID, and over here in parentheses is the modification number. So if we're just looking at this contract, well, great, I can click on this contract. It's going to become a search term. So you can see it over here. And now I'm just going to see I can see all of the mods and all of the activity, which is great. But look at these additional information. We have an administrative mod because it's the $0. We had a deobligation. That's a lot of information that we don't really care about when we're just trying to get general information. So that's why I really like adding that advanced search. So again, I clicked here, I clicked add, and modification number. and then I just put that at 0. And what that does is that's just going to give me all of the awards. I keep hitting enter after I do that, like that's going to be my magic search button. So you can see now we have that here. I can remove this at any point in my search, but what it's doing is it's reducing that data because I might be looking, especially if it's when was it awarded, when is it going to end. I don't care about all of the administrative. All right, so we have our place of performance, and maybe in here, we want to know about award type. So here's something else I want to pull out while we're looking at this. So we can see our award type here, that this is a delivery order, and here is the parent contract. So we have a delivery order, right? This is the contract award ID for the delivery order, but here is the parent contract. So if we're looking at NAICS activities for the Department of Defense, maybe we want to just go in and we want to find these definitive contracts versus delivery order, right? Because what we're looking for is the base $0 IDIQ contract that was at MATOC or SABRE or JOC, that job order contract. So we can actually go in here and you can just see those different in award type, and we can come in and add that. So we have award IDV type, and then see how these are all, or we could even pull up our Word document here, and I can come in, oops, okay, and not save that because I start typing over. So if we're trying to figure out here, see how they have delivery order, I could just put in DO or DCA, definitive contract. And again, it doesn't care. I'm just going to copy and paste because why not? And I'm going to throw that in here or not. Oh, and it would help if I type it correctly. Definitive, okay. And what that's doing is that's going to remove all my delivery orders. Now I'm just getting original. So you can see here, and look at, I went from thousands down to 359, and this is going to start helping. If we're looking for really specific, like paving contracts, maybe we could look up the PSC code for any of these. We can come even just scroll down. So here we go, look at this, repair, alteration. We can even just click on any of the PSC codes here, thinking again, well, my internet's slowing down. And now this is going to be the activity. So if I'm looking for the IDIQ type contract awards here done by, that are issued here in the state of Alaska, we can look it up. If I'm looking for ones that were done specifically by Department of Defense, I can click on Department of Defense and it's going to become a search criteria. And so now we can see that this top level box has changed from Department of Army, or from Department of Defense, from full department name down to here. And we could even hop in and say, oh, maybe is it an Air Force contract? They were thinking that 673rd contract office, and we can kind of come in here and look. So, and it's like, oh, wait, nope, it's not Air Force, I'm not seeing it. And again, we can just click on any of these X's. You can see it's thinking up here, it's removing it. I'm going back up to that level of search. So really be comfortable with playing with these activities, using those different search, going in and taking a look at it. While I have this up, let me just click view and show you what you can pull from looking at that individual contract award. Now, we can see information, the contracting officer, the prepared user last modified by, we can see the contract history. Here's that base and all award, the obligation. So if this is a multi-year contract, usually you don't have to go to the most recent modification to see that full dollar amount. It does track it even if you're looking at the base. But if we scroll down here, I apologize, it's going to blur for you with the delay, but see this description of requirements? This is all you're going to find. We are missing that full scope of work, but it does give us some, depending on what the agency puts in. You can see it's got a 250 character limit, but this is the closest thing that we're going to be able to find if we're looking for a history, looking for something specific. The sad thing is there's no way to exit this and go back to our list. For me, it popped it up as a separate window, so I can just close that tab and go back to my list. If it opens it up in the same tab, the best you can do is hit your back arrow, and often in that case, you're going to lose whatever was your last search term, and then you can just add it back in. So again, kind of play in and out depending on how you have your browser set up. All right, so real quick, let's go in. So we had a request to look at this from janitorial. So I want to get that NAICS code. Here we go, 561720, right? And now I'm going to come back FPDS. And I'm building up my layers of search. Don't be afraid to click and pull on these things. So I've got my first layer in here, right? I'm going to go ahead and do descending date sign just because I don't care what happened in 2001. And that's just a preference of mine. I want to see the new stuff on top. And then I can come in here and I'm going to add some data. Again, I want to do place of performance. I click P on my keyboard and then just arrow down, date name, Alaska, and all caps. I was trying to type award because I read it, so that's what I was going to type. I'm going to come down here, and let's say I'm just looking for contracts that expire. Maybe they're 1 or 2 year contracts. So I'm going to come in here, and when are these contracts going to be up for bid again? So I'm going to play and add an award completion date, and you can see it gives you a date range. What I like to do to make sure I'm working within the system parameters is I click my calendar app and I click the word today. I don't know if you guys saw that down at the bottom. Sorry, I can't make this any bigger. You can see right here, today, and of course that's, and then I go in and change the date. So anything from, let's say 9/30 from, let's go back to 2023 to, we'll do today up to 26. So anything that's going to complete within this 3-year time period. And the reason I like doing the today instead of trying to just plug the dates in, if you mistype anything, you're just going to get errors. And this way I know that the format is going to be something that the search engine is happy with. Because the funny thing is what it does is it does it to that military where it has the year, month, date. And if we try putting it that way, trust me, just click the today and then tweak your date. You'll just get better search results. So now what I have is things for the place of performance or the contract is going to be completed within this time period. And we can still see we have pages, and we can add one more. So you can see how many pages of this, and even just Department of Transportation 244. This is why I really like using that modification number for 0, click search. All right, now as far as trying to do 8A, Let me close this for a second. Okay. Small business, competitive. These are the search terms. Honestly, guys, here we go. Type of set aside. There we go. We got to just think about this. So here, so veteran 8A. All right, so let's use that and see how, well, I'm trying to figure out how do I want to tweak, how do I want to do that search? Go and look at the fields in this document. It's really helpful. So let's come in here, we'll add another type. And of course, I probably forgot, what was it that I was looking? Type of set aside. All right, let me pull that down. I'm gonna come in here, I'm gonna click T, keyboard, and then just arrow down. Type of contract, type of set aside. And then that just said it was free form. So I'm gonna try 8A. Thinking. And it pulled up with 1. So sometimes the set aside, so I can go ahead here and view, and there is a set aside. There's a field here where it says competition, and I can look and see, did they use the parentheses? Is there something else that they used for sole source? Here we go. So 8A competed. So type of set aside. So it just had 8A, so it should have been able to, oops, sorry, I was trying to speak. Okay. The set asides sometimes, I don't know. It's just one I've not had a lot of luck with trying to pull set aside data. Maybe that's where we can go into SAM, sign in, go into the data bank, and use some of the ad hoc. It helps if you say that word correctly. And we can come in here and look for the difference. And it kind of talks about the standard reports, static, administrative, all these different type of reports that you can go in and pull. You do need to sign in to pull those reports, so I'm not going to bother with that now. So yeah, 8A, it's only pulling 1 from 2021. Definitive contract, do I have something else in here that might be bugging that? So I'm just going to remove that. I might have to do some digging and playing with it more to see what is the best way to find 8A set aside. It's almost better to look at the janitorial contracts and then look at that information and look at the contract itself and then start sorting. What I'd really say the best use of this, instead of focusing on 8A per se, is look at which agency is using janitorial contracts the most frequently here in the state of Alaska. And then take a look at here, these, Department of Agriculture has 29, Department of Transportation, and then the Forest Service is the #1 agency for janitorial contracts. Then FAA, then Department of Army, GSA. So these are the type of things that might be more beneficial. Find those agencies, find those contracting offices, and reach out to that small business professional. And then we can see the top awardees. Since I've picked a specific department name, we can see the top, the awardees themselves. All right, any questions for anyone on using this? Again, I really recommend just go in here and search until you break something, because anytime that we simply add something and it breaks and it comes back with no search results, because that was supposed to be a letter, I'm doing an intentional, something I know will break it. It's going to come back here and tell me no search results, no result found. It's like, oops, okay, it's as simple as clicking that X and it's going to take me up to that next level. If we've done where we've selected an agency and I can see, maybe I'm looking for teaming partners, who's doing the most work, with the Forest Service, here's this Terry Fabel that has 11 contracts. Maybe I want to reach out to this individual. Or if I don't want to look at the Forest Service anymore, again, I'm going to click on that, let it remove. And now I can come back here and say, well, what about FAA? What are they doing for contracts? And who are their top? So good information. I do want to point out again that at any point in time, if you are looking at incumbents or looking at teaming partners, you can enter their unique entity ID. You can see it right here. And we can see every single contract that that particular contractor has received. Let me just show you that, and then I will let you guys go because I am running out of time. So what I've done is I just grabbed that UEI number, that unique entity identifier, and date signed, just because I like that information, and we can see all contract history for this particular contract. So you can see how many contracts they've had, 42, this particular company. This is the janitorial, Alaska Janitorial SF Inc. And we can see all of the contracts that they've been awarded. Great way for looking at. Now, because I don't have modification, I just want to pull that highlight. It looks like there's doing a lot of contracts, but look at the modifications. Again, if you just want to see, like, oh yeah, these are someone I want to team with, look at all their contracts, do that mod 0, and you're going to get a better idea, because you can have one contract that just has a ton of modifications for whatever reason. So this gives you a better idea. So instead of 42 actions, we can see that's gone down to 9 for base contracts. All right, well, everyone, I've run over my time. I apologize for that. Any last questions at all? All right, well, I will go ahead and we can close out today's activity. Before I let you go, let me just pull up contact information. If you think of anything, have any questions after the fact, or you're trying to do a search in FPDS, you're welcome to reach out to myself or any one of our team, and let's schedule an appointment and let me work with you specifically on how are you using FPDS. We can do that shared screen, let you run your search. Let us know how we can help you so that you no longer look at this overwhelming database as something you don't want to mess with, to something that becomes very familiar and you're willing to go in and plink around until you break things and become familiar, because it's an incredible contracting tool. So thank you again for joining me this morning. I appreciate you taking that time. And at this point in time, I'm going to go ahead and close our webinar.